You think you know the person sleeping in the room next to yours? You share a fridge, you split the bills, you make small talk in the hallway. I thought I knew Liam. I thought he was just a quiet, harmless guy. That was until I found the shoebox hidden under his bed. It wasn't full of old photos or letters. It was full of pieces of me. A lock of my hair, a photo of me sleeping, my old toothbrush, each one a trophy from a violation I never even knew was happening. This isn't a story about a ghost. It's about the very real monster I invited into my home, and the horrifying realization that my safest space had become his private hunting ground.
When I first put out the ad for a roommate, Liam seemed like the perfect candidate. He was a grad student, clean-cut, polite, and desperately needed a place close to campus. His references checked out, and during the interview he was charmingly awkward, mostly keeping to himself. For the first few months, it was an ideal arrangement. We operated on different schedules. I worked a standard 9 to 5, and he was often at the university library late into the night. We'd leave notes for each other on the counter, simple things like bought milk or trash day tomorrow. He was so unobtrusive, so ghost-like in his presence that I almost forgot he was there. It was a comfortable, easy silence, the kind you cherish in a shared living situation. I felt lucky. I had no idea that his silence wasn't a sign of respect for my privacy, but a predator's patience. He was studying me, learning my habits, not as a roommate, but as a subject.
The first oddity was small enough to dismiss. I came home one afternoon and found my favorite coffee mug, one I specifically kept on a high shelf, sitting in the drying rack by the sink, still warm. I knew I hadn't used it that day. I asked Liam about it later that evening, and he just shrugged, saying he must have grabbed it by mistake, thinking it was one of the generic apartment mugs. It was a plausible explanation, and I let it go. But then other things started happening. A book I was reading would be moved from my nightstand to the living room table, with the bookmark placed a few pages ahead of where I had left it. I started feeling a strange sense of displacement, a subtle but persistent feeling that my personal space was being subtly altered when I wasn't looking. I began questioning my own memory, wondering if I was just becoming forgetful or stressed from work.
The unease grew into a low-grade paranoia over the next few weeks. I started noticing the faint scent of his specific, slightly musky cologne in my bedroom when I'd get home, even though he had supposedly been out all day. Once, I found a single, long strand of my own hair laid perfectly straight across my pillow, almost like a piece of art. It was so deliberate, so unnatural that it sent a cold shiver down my spine. I started doing little tests. I'd place an eyelash on my bedroom doorknob before I left for work. When I'd get home, it would be gone. He was entering my room. The knowledge settled in my gut like a block of ice. He wasn't just clumsy or forgetful. He was methodically exploring my life, my sanctuary, and I had no idea why or what he was looking for. The silence in the apartment was no longer comfortable. It was heavy with unspoken surveillance.
The breaking point came when Liam told me he was going away for the weekend to visit his parents. The wave of relief I felt was immediately followed by a surge of resolve. I had to know. My fear was now eclipsed by a desperate need for answers. On Saturday morning, after I heard his car pull away, I waited a full hour, my heart pounding against my ribs. Then I walked to his bedroom door. It was unlocked, as it always was. The room was meticulously clean, almost sterile. His bed was perfectly made. His desk was organized, not a single paper out of place. It looked like a model room, impersonal and cold. For a moment, I thought I was crazy, that I had imagined everything, but I knew I wasn't. I started searching, my hands trembling as I opened his drawers, his closet, feeling like a criminal myself, but driven by an instinct that screamed I was in danger.
Under his bed, tucked away in the farthest corner, was a simple gray shoebox. It felt heavier than it should. I pulled it out into the light, my breath catching in my throat. I lifted the lid and my stomach dropped. Inside, nestled on a bed of cotton, was a collection. My collection. There was a bobby pin I'd lost weeks ago, a used napkin from a restaurant we'd gone to once, a photo printed on glossy paper of me asleep in my bed, mouth slightly open, completely vulnerable. And then I saw it, a small, clear plastic baggie containing a lock of my reddish-brown hair, and next to it, my toothbrush from 2 months ago, the one I had thrown out because it had gone missing. It was a horrifying, intimate museum of my existence, curated by a silent observer who lived just a few feet away.
I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. A terrifying cold clarity washed over me. I gently closed the box, slid it back under the bed exactly where I found it, and walked out of his room. I grabbed my purse and my keys, left my apartment without packing a single thing, and drove to a friend's house. From there, I called the police. When they investigated, they found the box, but they also found others. 3 more shoeboxes hidden in a false panel in his closet, each containing similar collections from his previous female roommates. Liam wasn't just a creep, he was a serial stalker who escalated his behavior with each new victim. I was just the next one in his series. I never went back to that apartment, and to this day, the sound of a key in a lock makes my blood run cold.
The first rule my new roommate, Derek, gave me was simple. Never, under any circumstances, try to open the door to his office. He kept it locked 24/7. I figured he was just a private person, maybe working on a top-secret project. But then came the smells, a faint chemical odor like bleach mixed with something metallic. Then came the sounds at 3 a.m., the dragging of heavy-duty trash bags down the stairs. This story isn't about what I saw. It's about the one time he forgot to lock the door and I discovered why his room was completely soundproof. I didn't find a body. I found something much, much worse.
Finding a decent roommate in the city is a nightmare. So when Derek answered my ad, I was relieved. He was in his late 20s, worked as a freelance logistics consultant, a vague title I never questioned, and most importantly, he had the first month's rent and security deposit in cash. He was a man of few words, built like a brick wall, and his eyes had a flat, unreadable quality. His only strange request was about the second bedroom. He called it his office and insisted on installing a new heavy-duty lock on the door, to which he would have the only key. Client confidentiality, he'd grunted, lot of sensitive materials. I was just happy to have the rent covered, so I agreed without a second thought. I was naive. I mistook his intense secrecy for professionalism, when in reality it was a predator meticulously building its nest.
The first month was quiet. Too quiet. Derek was a ghost. He'd be gone for days at a time, then reappear in the middle of the night. I'd wake up to the sound of the front door closing and find a fresh stack of cash for his half of the utilities on the kitchen counter. The oddities began to pile up. I noticed deep scratches on the floorboards in the hallway leading from his room to the front door, as if something incredibly heavy was being dragged regularly. Then came the trash. He never used the kitchen trash can. Instead, once or twice a week, always between 2 and 4 a.m., I'd be woken by the distinct, labored sound of him dragging thick, black contractor bags down the stairs. The sheer weight of them, judging by the thudding sound they made, was unnerving. What kind of office work produces that much heavy, late-night trash?
The smell was the worst part. It wasn't constant, but it would appear suddenly, seeping from under his locked door. It was a sharp, acrid smell, a mix of industrial cleaner and something else, something organic and faintly sweet that turned my stomach. I tried to ask him about it once, casually mentioning a weird plumbing smell. He just stared at me with those dead eyes and said, "I'll take care of it." The smell would vanish for a week, replaced by the overwhelming scent of bleach, before inevitably returning. My imagination started running wild. I convinced myself he was a taxidermist or was involved in some kind of chemical manufacturing. The truth, I would soon find out, was far more horrifying than anything my mind could conjure. My apartment didn't just feel strange. It felt sick, contaminated by the secret behind that door.
One Tuesday evening, everything changed. Derek came out of his room looking more agitated than I'd ever seen him. He said he had a family emergency and had to leave town immediately for at least a week. He grabbed a duffel bag, threw some cash on the counter, and was gone in less than 5 minutes. The apartment fell into a profound silence. For hours I sat on the couch, the mystery of his room screaming at me. Every instinct told me to leave it alone, to mind my own business. But the smells, the sounds, the secrecy, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked to his door, and on a whim, I tried the handle. My heart stopped. It was unlocked. In his haste, he had forgotten. The air in front of the door was cold, and the faint, sick-sweet smell was stronger than ever.
I pushed the door open, and the sight before me defied all logic. It wasn't an office. The room was almost completely bare, but the walls, the floor, and even the ceiling were covered in thick, black, sound-absorbing acoustic foam, the kind you see in recording studios. In the center of the room was a single, bolted-down metal chair, its surface scoured clean, but surrounded by dark, suspicious stains on the foam beneath it. A new industrial-sized drain had been installed in the middle of the floor, a detail that was definitely not there when I moved in. There were no computers, no desks, no filing cabinets. There was only the chair, the drain, and a set of heavy-duty restraints hanging from a hook on the wall. It wasn't an office. It was a cage. A purpose-built chamber designed for one thing: to hold someone and ensure that no matter what happened inside, no one on the outside would ever hear it.
I didn't touch anything. I backed out of the room, slowly pulled the door shut, and sprinted out of the apartment. I left everything behind: my clothes, my computer, my entire life. I called the police from a payphone blocks away, my voice trembling as I gave an anonymous tip about my roommate in his locked room. I never went back. I never found out exactly what Derek did in that room or to whom. I saw a small news brief a month later about an arrest made at my old address, tied to a human trafficking ring, but the details were sparse. The lack of an answer is its own kind of horror. I don't know what I was living next to, but I know it was pure evil. Now, I can't live in apartments. I can't stand silence, because silence, I learned, isn't always empty. Sometimes it's just soundproof. Everyone has a moment where their roommate does something slightly out of character. My roommate, Sarah, started having more than just moments. It started with her suddenly hating her favorite food. Then her laugh changed. The final straw was when I saw her on a busy street corner staring at our apartment building, while the real Sarah was supposedly taking a shower inside. This isn't a story about a person with a secret. It's a story about a person who was slowly, piece by piece, being replaced by a perfect, terrifying copy. And I was the only one who could see it.
Sarah and I had been best friends since college and roommates for 3 years. I knew her better than I knew myself. I knew she was fiercely left-handed, that she had a small, crescent-shaped scar above her right eyebrow from a childhood fall, and that she was deathly allergic to peanuts. We had a rhythm, an easy shorthand that made living together effortless. Our apartment was a shared history, filled with inside jokes and memories. That's why, when the changes began, they felt less like quirks and more like glitches in the fabric of my reality. It was a slow erosion of the person I knew, so subtle at first that I brushed it off as stress or a new phase in her life. I wish I had trusted my gut sooner, because the thing that began living with me wasn't going through a phase. It was learning how to be her.
The first glitch happened on a Tuesday. I was cooking pasta, her favorite meal, and she walked into the kitchen, wrinkled her nose, and said, "Ugh, I can't stand the smell of garlic." I just stared at her. This was a woman who once described her ideal man as someone who smelled faintly of garlic and old books. When I reminded her of this, she just laughed, a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "People change," she said. A few days later, I saw her writing a shopping list with her right hand. When I pointed it out, she looked down at her hand as if surprised to see it, then quickly switched to her left, saying she was just trying to be ambidextrous. It was the excuse of a stranger, not the flustered denial of a friend. Each incident was a tiny crack in the foundation of the person I thought I knew.
The changes became more profound. Her sense of humor, once dry and witty, turned broad and simplistic. She started watching reality TV shows she used to mock relentlessly. The small scar above her eyebrow seemed
faded, less defined, almost like a poorly applied concealer. I felt like I was going insane. I brought it up to our mutual friends, but they dismissed my concerns. She just seems happier, more relaxed, they'd say. Maybe you're just not used to it. Their words isolated me, making me the crazy one. Was I imagining it? Was I so stuck in the past that I couldn't accept my best friend's growth? I started to doubt my own perception of reality, which I now believe was exactly what the thing pretending to be her wanted.
The most terrifying moment, the one that shattered any illusion of normalcy, happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Sarah had told me she was feeling unwell and was going to take a long, hot shower. About 10 minutes after I heard the water start running, I looked out our living room window down at the street below. There, standing on the opposite corner under a black umbrella, was Sarah. It was her, undeniably. Same raincoat, same posture, same haircut. She was stock still, staring directly up at our window. At me. My blood turned to ice. I could hear the shower still running in the bathroom down the hall. 2 Sarahs, one in the shower and one on the street. The one on the street slowly raised a hand, gave a small, knowing wave, and then turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd.
I ran to the bathroom, my heart hammering in my chest, and threw open the door. The room was thick with steam. The shower was running, but the stall was empty. The water was ice cold. There was no sign that anyone had been in there. I backed out, my mind reeling. Was the thing I saw on the street the real Sarah trying to warn me? Or was the thing that had been living with me a decoy and its creator was the one on the street? I couldn't think. I just knew I wasn't safe. I packed a bag, my hands shaking so badly I could barely zip it. As I was about to leave, Sarah walked in the front door, shaking rain from her coat. "Hey," she said with a bright smile. "Decided I needed some air. What's with the bag?" Her eyes were empty, and her smile never reached them.
I mumbled an excuse about a family emergency, the same lie Derek used in the other story, and fled. I never spoke to her, or it, again. I blocked her number and all our mutual friends. I moved to a different city a month later. Sometimes, out of a morbid curiosity that I can't suppress, I look at her social media. Her posts are all cheerful. Pictures with our old friends who are all smiling, oblivious. But in her eyes, in every single photo, there's a hollowness, a vacant imitation of life. And the scar above her right eyebrow is completely gone. I don't know what happened to my best friend, if she was replaced or consumed or simply erased. But I know that the thing wearing her face is still out there, and I was the only one who noticed when the real Sarah was gone.